a lot of you read about this in the trade magazines, you read about it in the mainstream media. There is going to be a different carrier, someone with different commercial rights for the Asian Football Confederation. This will impact massive different things within Asian football. So Patrick, could you first tell us exactly what the deal entails?
Well, the commercial details of the deal, I'm probably not at liberty to talk about, but in terms of the actual structure of the deal, it'll comprise of 2 commercial cycles of AFC rights. Each commercial cycle will be 4 years long. So the core term of the contract, if you like, is 8 years. But the contract doesn't actually, in real terms, kick in terms of the actual competitions until the end of 2020. So there's a sort of a 2-year ramp up before the competition starts. So if you like, it's really over the course of the next 10 years that we'll be working with the AFC. The second important component to the contract is in respect to the competitions that it covers. So it will cover both national team competitions as well as the club competitions. And of course, very importantly for the AFC and for football in Asia, it'll also cover what we call the minor tournaments, women's, futsal, underage football, etc. So within the national team football, you have, of course, very importantly, the qualifiers for the World Cups. So there will be the qualification process for Qatar, and will also be the qualification process for the second World Cup, the World Cup that comes after in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So these are obviously very important to the football fans in the region, but it'll also contain the Asia Cup, which is the tournament that features 24 teams from across Asia. Where that's going to be in 23 hasn't been announced yet, but perhaps it'll come, an announcement will come later in the year. And then on the club side, we have, of course, the Asian Champions League and also the AFC Cup. These are the 2 club competitions. Yeah, so that's what's in the contract.
It's very, very exciting. We've got 2 Asian Cups there, we've got 2 World Cups there, and as Patrick mentioned, they will decide the hosts of the 2023 Asian Cup in October. There is some speculation that could go to maybe China, who knows. The next Asian Cup will be held in United Arab Emirates. But Yuheng, maybe I could talk to you about the process. It was a 15-month process, bidding process, and you beat some very difficult opposition. So just talk about that process of bidding for this very big contract.
Right, I mean, it's definitely a very competitive procedure, talking about the preparation from the AFC internally, using their knowledge, internal and also external consultants. It's the first time AFC put their core property on the market in an open way. For DDMC's point of view, DDMC become a very active and international player in the market in the past 3 to 4 years. With our latest acquisition of Super Sports, it's a $500 million acquisition. With our previous acquisition of DE Sports, it's the best sponsorship sales company in China. So we thought it is a time for what we think still we are a Chinese company to form an international team. That's why we tied up with Patrick and David. That's why DDMC Fortis become a task force to bid for the property. So it is a very, I would say, a difficult procedure for us after exactly 3 rounds of bidding. I think our comprehensive solution, our advantage in Chinese market, in general with Patrick and David's background working in the past for the top European competition, and also I think the most strong commitment on the financial perspectives, combined together to help us to win the tender after all this procedure.
Well, Patrick, we know you very well. We've seen you over many years working with different sports bodies, commercially, with team marketing, of course, with the UEFA Champions League, and also working recently on the ICC, the International Champions Cup, very successful here in Singapore. So what kind of expertise can you bring from those previous roles to this?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wouldn't say it's purely about me. I think that we have a very strong team, a very strong senior management team that we're putting in place, actually is in place now. Most of that senior management team have come from working at Team Marketing originally. Obviously, Team Marketing is the long-standing partner of UEFA, has worked very closely with UEFA, I think, to transform the Champions League and the Europa League into probably the most admired sports commercial property in the world, outside of the States maybe. And so, I mean, the experience that we really gained at Team and UEFA was not just about how to commercialize those rights, which I think Team always did very successfully, but, and this has direct relevance to the AFC, we also had the experience of running, 8 matches on a Tuesday night, 8 matches on a Wednesday night, double that on a Thursday night, and doing so from the UK right across to Azerbaijan. So it was also about having the experience and the knowledge of delivering large numbers of matches simultaneously across a very diverse region. And that's obviously experience that I think is going to be very relevant in the AFC project. But perhaps even more basic than that, I think a lot of experience that's come from product development. Not just the Champions League, but also the transformation from the Europa League, the UEFA Cup to the Europa League in the mid-noughties. I think that's very relevant experience. And I think also in terms of building brands, I think the UEFA brands are very admired brands, and we were very much involved in that. Also, as you mentioned, we've been working on the International Champions Cup for the last 5 years. We basically built an international premium soccer brand from nothing, and built it right up to where it is today. So we have a lot of experience in product development. In the football business, we've got a lot of experience in brand development. And of course, you can't get anywhere in this business without achieving very strong commercial results. So we'll be looking to put all of those things to work for the AFC for the next 10 years.
We're at a sports business conference. People are interested about money, about what you paid for it, and you beat off some very strong opposition, IMG, MP & Silver, Media Pro, Infront, Lagardère, in partnership with Dentsu and Perform. There have been some crazy figures reported. What can you tell us, Patrick, right here?
Not much. I think there was some very high figures that were mentioned shortly after the decision was made.
Were they accurate?
No, I would say that those particular figures are not accurate. I think there are some figures that have been sort of disclosed in the trades, TV sports markets, for example. I think those figures are a little bit more in the realms of reality. What is for sure is that we're offering and we're going to pay the AFC a huge amount of money, but we do that because we believe in the product and we believe in the region, and we believe that we can deliver that money back for our shareholders and make a margin on it. So we're very confident about that, actually.
Okay, so that's what Patrick says about what they paid and the process. But let's ask you, Heng, about China, the China element, because we are seeing now China not very involved with some of the sponsorship of AFC competitions. I believe it's just one Chinese company, whereas you've got, I think it's 5 Japanese companies and several from the Middle East as well. So this deal doesn't include the Middle East and North Africa. But what about the China element? How can you get China on board with the AFC and really get them as a force in Asian football, both on the field and commercially?
Well, I would say China, in terms of sports market, is changing dramatically in the past 3 to 5 years. I still recall my memories when I first came down to Sports Matters is 3 years ago. At that time, companies like Wanda, like Fosun, and also other companies began to go abroad China to go to the international market, beginning to purchase IPs, what we call it. But after 3 years, now we see the market is becoming more and more rational. Our investment AFC properties in general is also a rational investment. But definitely both AFC and our team, we believe deeply that in order to achieve our target, China will be an important market because both our media rights and sponsorship in the past, AFCs rely on heavily from the revenue from Japan and from Middle East. I think this is a way that when we structure our deal, how China will play, how much, and on a proportion side, we can play will be the key. One of our subsidiaries called DDMC Fortis, who is helping FIFA to selling their regional sponsorship for Russia World Cup, which we brought 3 clients on the third tier to Russia. And from this World Cup, we see there is 7 to 8 Chinese sponsors become in different tiers, World Cup partner or FIFA partners. So we feel there is a strong need from the sponsorship part for Chinese companies, especially on internet company. There are some manufacturers on electricities. There are also some brands like mobile phones. They want to go out of China. They want to do business in the world. So their first step will be doing some business in Asia. So this is our big chance. Media rights part, we see the market is recovered. There are new players joined the table. So we see it's also going to be some dramatic increase on the media rights value. So I think in general, China will play more or less 30% in the future, talking about the total revenue stream from the global market. How are we going to deliver that using our expertise in China, using our local team in China, together with our international partners in general will be a point that we're going to figure out.
When we look at the state of Asian football at the moment, we had the recent World Cup. The Asian teams didn't do too badly. We saw South Korea beating Germany, the defending champions. But the way you see, Patrick, of really energizing Asia through this contract, and also the China element for monetizing it. What can you say about trying to lift the profile also of the AFC Champions League and maybe having some interest, not quite at the level of UEFA Champions League, but getting the interest up? What can you do?
Well, I mean, I think you need to look at it at multiple levels. I mean, I think like everything, you've got to start with the product, if I can call it that, or the competition. I think that, you know, something like the World Cup qualifiers are pretty robust the way they're structured at the moment. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't like to see some changes, but they're pretty robust. Also, the Asia Cup is pretty well structured the way it is at the moment. I think the club competitions probably do have quite a lot of potential to evolve. So I think we will definitely be working with the AFC to see if there's a format or a series of formats or combination of formats that we can move to that will make the competitions more appealing for the fans. And really the main consideration in all of this, including ultimately the commercialization, is based around the fans, okay? So what we really need to do is we really need to have club competitions that are much more relevant to the fans. I can't go into the details here of what we're hoping to do, but maybe some of the clues as to how we might approach it, I think, would include the fact that, you know, the biggest advantage that this region has is the size, but also one of the things that in some ways has held us back has been the size, the fact that it is such a diverse region. There's an awful lot of really strong national rivalries within regions. For example, within Southeast Asia, I believe Indonesia playing against Thailand, either at national team level or even at club level, is something that's really going to, you know, get the fans extremely excited. When someone from this region plays someone from the other side of the region, it perhaps isn't so good from a footballing point of view, but it's also not something that stimulates that kind of rivalry too. So I think what we're going to be looking at in those club competitions is seeing whether there's a way to create more of those regional rivalries, which we believe will drive a lot of fan interest, which will therefore drive interest from broadcasters, which will drive in turn ratings. And once you have ratings, the advertisers will follow. So it's really about creating that chain. At the same time, we have to, of course, never forget that this is a regional AFC, right? So everything has also got to have that regional element to it. But somewhere in there, I think, is where we'll be looking from a product point of view. Once you know what your product is and how your competition is formed, you then have to work on your brand. What that competition represents, what it brings to the fan has got to be very, very clearly crystallized and then articulated to the fan. So the fan knows exactly what it is that the competition is supposed to be doing and what it brings for them. So the marketing and the branding elements will then be incredibly important. And really the third part of the chain, if I can call it that, will be really the communications and the marketing around that. And that will be around developing much, I think communication channels, if I can put it that way, that are probably more to do with the next 10 years of where Asia is going to be rather than the last 10 years. And obviously the digital approach is going to be really important there. So we'll be putting a huge emphasis and focus on that as well.
Now, I believe it's 1993 that World Sport Group and then Lagardère held the rights for AFC, the commercial rights. So, Patrick, how would you assess their performance?
I mean, one of the things that I probably should have said at the very top of this interview this evening is that Hang and I, and basically everybody that we work with and for, have got enormous professional respect for what, first of all, Asia Sport Group, then World Sport Group, and more latterly, Lagardère Sports. I remember working with Seamus back in 1993, 1994 when I came to Asia first. Actually, the company I worked for, Star TV, had an investment in Asia Sports Group back in those days. So we've been involved and working alongside this competition for the last 25 years. So the first thing I would say is we have enormous respect for the work that's been done in the 25 years. I think one of the things that we absolutely appreciate and certainly realize now a lot is just the scale of the task that's involved in operating competitions at this level. So I think to get it where it is today has been something that really needs to be respected, and that's very, very important. I think really what our task now is just to try to bring it to the next level. And that's really around looking at the region and where the region is going in the next 10 years, the fans, what's going to happen, and trying to, as I say, create products and competitions for that audience.
Well, Patrick touched on the digital element and how important that's going to be to monetize this. Heng, what's your thoughts on the digital aspect, and especially with the China market, which is so key to you monetizing this deal?
Right. I spent almost 15 years in China, especially on the digital platform. I would say the digital part in China is definitely strong. It's also pretty comprehensive in the different level, creating lifestyles, creating now most of the company working on massively on the payments methodology, on also new things on technology part. We also noticed that some content part that people began to work related to digital, what we call a revolution compared to the traditional way people consume media content. For us, I mean, digital will be the key in the future. I mean, the millenniums and the even young generation now focused on consume. I would say in general their media consumption is even higher than in the past. But where and how they consume the media content, where and how they feel, this is something what we call relevant to them. Talking about Asian football, talking about football in general, will depends on what platform they will use and what product we can offer. In China, we have a very good experience working on the OTT platform. We have a different level of OTT products, and it will become a new, I would say, a new platform to show the content, either live or on-demand content. Also, we see the original content, which in each local market need to be tailor-made and to put on the right way, on the right platform. Either it's a social media platform or it's whatever platform to and for the fans to be engaged and to find a new commercial model based on that. People now become talking more and more on e-gaming. What is also a digital part, but what that means as a traditional rights holders' perspective, from the AFC's perspective, from our agency's perspective, how we can be involved in that e-gaming process in the future, how to monetize that, becomes a very good question for us to answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really intriguing, isn't it? What will happen, you know, beyond 2020 as this really kicks in, this deal. But let's talk more about DDMC. You touched on it before about some of the properties that the company, the parent company, already has. Patrick, you mentioned we mentioned the Super Sports Media, which has the Premier League rights in China. There's also the La Liga rights as well. There's the connection to Chongqing, Lifan, Granada, and Parma. Can you just tell us a bit about the company?
Yeah, I'll leave that to Hank.
Well, DDMC, as I mentioned, is a Wuhan-based company which is listed in Shanghai Stock Exchange. I would say DDMC as a platform. Now we focus on both entertainment and sports. On sports, it all starts from 2015 when we acquired a company called D Sports. It's a sponsorship, sales, and solution and strategy. Basically, it's a to-B business platform. We're helping various Olympic committee in Asian countries. We help both FIFA and other rights holders to sell sponsorship locally. Our latest acquisition, 100% acquisition of Super Sports, which is the Premier League partner in China in the past 10 years. I would say it's the best media rights agency in China, talking about their distribution and the monetize capability in general, working with Premier League to set up a benchmark in the market on both distribution and the commercialization. Besides of these two key pillars, we have other acquisitions overseas. We have a player agent company called the Media-Based Sport in Barcelona, run by Pep Guardiola. It's Pep Guardiola's brother. It's a player agent company. Also, we have some player image rights deals with Suarez, Iniesta, some Spanish and Barcelona players. In general, we outside the listed part, we have our mother company, Dangdai Group. We own Chongqing Lifan, is a CSL club. We also the owner of Granada, is a Spanish second division team. Our sports group chairman, John Jiang, is the chairman of Italian Serie A club Parma. So DDMC as a platform, we have a very comprehensive sports investment and properties. And AFC, the joint venture between DDMC and Fortis, which will be based in Hong Kong as the operation headquarters, will be dedicated to AFC.
Patrick, we know you well as a veteran of the sports commercial scene. What will you do with some of the previous projects you've been working on, and exactly will DDMC only concentrate on the AFC?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons that I think we actually won this contract from the AFC, in addition to the points that Hang mentioned, was the fact that we've offered and we've guaranteed to the AFC a bespoke solution. In other words, the DDMC Fortis company will be dedicated to the AFC. We will only have one client. That client will be the AFC. And so we will be completely dedicated to them 100%. This basically was replicating the team, very successful, again, Team UEFA model. And I think that was something that really appealed to the AFC, in addition to the other factors. So we will be very focused on that task. We have big targets.
Yes.
We think we've got a very clear vision as to how we're going to make that happen. We want to have a transformational effect on how the Asian fan enjoys, consumes Asian football. We believe in the region.
Will that be at the expense of European football? Does it need to be at the expense? Something that you helped build up?
Yeah, I mean, look, how do you define market share? share of mind. How do you define that? It's very difficult. Are we competing against primetime drama or on Wednesday nights, Tuesday nights? In many respects, we are. I personally am not sure that we're really competing against European football. I think that we're maybe going to be competing, I hope, more with what's on television on Monday nights, Tuesday nights, and Wednesday nights in the region. In prime time, because that's when our competitions are take place. That's when we're going to be competing for the attention of the fan. Okay. However, of course, we're also going to be competing to a certain extent with football. But I think it can complement. The two things can complement each other. And we certainly want to see football being a very successful genre, continuing to be a very successful genre.
In just one World Cup that China's qualified for, 2002, Korea and Japan. They are going to be in the Asian Cup in 2019 in United Arab Emirates. Yuheng, we see that the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping is getting behind football. We're seeing the likes of Hulk Elkerson, playing in the Chinese Super League and the AFC Champions League. So how close are we to waking up this sleeping giant of China and have it as a real leader in world football?
Well, I think the whole country, from the top leadership until the grassroots level players, coaches, we try our best to find a way in short term and also in long term to enhance the competency of China national team in different level, in the national men's team, in the women's team, in the youth team. From all the perspective talking about to support the team to enhance their capability of playing football. We see there are some positive changes on the youth level, that more and more children participate in sports. Now is the educational ministry to launch their new school football program. There are many more entrepreneurs and companies began to invest dramatically into grassroots. But that needs time, that definitely needs time. So we will wait and see whether the CFA for them the next step to host either 2023 Asian Cup or even for a bigger target. We don't know, but we'll wait and see what will happen in pretty soon.
You think it's likely that China could get the 2023 Asian Cup?
Well, I don't think so, but they need to make a decision at the end of the day. If we want to increase the volume of people participating in this sport, if we want to increase the quality and the competition level, you need to invest in the right time. We see Korea and Japan back to 2022, the football in that region becomes so popular, and you create almost 20 years a blossom for their achievements in the global stage. So I think China will become pretty much similar to follow that route on both the top level and the grassroots level. I don't think we need to wait so long to see they perform well.
Well, the new contract will kick in at the end of 2020, but what's the road ahead, Patrick? No doubt there are a lot of sports professionals in this room who are wondering how they can work with you, what sort of roles you'll be needing, and what's the steps you're taking at the moment.
Yeah, so the company will be based in Hong Kong, primarily in Hong Kong, I should say, but we will, of course, have offices in the region, certainly the Middle East, Southeast Asia. Obviously, the AFC are based in Kuala Lumpur, so we want to be very close to them. China is also a place where we're going to put a huge amount of effort and investment. We are beginning to hire already. We have a site on LinkedIn, DDMC Fortis. There's actually quite a few positions already advertised there. If anybody is interested in working for us, they should go to that LinkedIn site. We'll be adding more and more positions over the coming weeks and months.
How many staff do you have now?
Well, at the moment, we've probably 12 to 14 people that are working full time, but that will go up, 8 or 10-fold, I would say, within the next 12 to 18 months. And yeah, there's positions in all areas, from legal positions, sales, account management, sponsorship, media, and of course, the bulk of the staff will actually be focused on delivery. operations. Yeah.
Very exciting. It's an 8-year deal, begins at the end of 2020. The commercial rights for the AFC, DDMC Fortis. Looking forward to what's going to happen, and hopefully we can really elevate Asian football. I'd like to thank Patrick Murphy, board member, Fortis Sports AG, and Yu Hang, executive director, DDMC Fortis. Thanks, guys, for being on this panel.
Great.
Thanks, Jason.
Big thanks, everybody, to Jason, Yu Hang, and